Almost. Major. Holy fucking shit, this is major!
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Almost Major, where we talk about the many major studios and the films they release. My name is Kevin Tudor. I'm here with Bryden Doyle.
Hello.
And Charlie Nash.
Hello.
And super special guest. How would you like to be introduced? As the Ghouls contributor?
Yeah, I'm the admin assistant for Ghouls Magazine, and I'm also a senior contributor.
Ariel Powers-Schaub, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. How are you guys?
Good.
Great.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh yeah, I'm super stoked to talk about these movies.
Hell yeah. Today we are talking about Cabin Fever 2002, premiered at TIFF September 2002, released in the U.S. on September 12th, 2003, at number 3 in 2,087 theaters, maxed out at 2,100 theaters, budget of $1.5 million, opening weekend of $8.6 million, domestic gross of $21.1 million, and overall gross of $30.3 million. Top 5 films that weekend: Once Upon a Time in Mexico, Matchstick Men, Cabin Fever, Dickie Roberts' former child star, of course, and Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl.
So that was still in the top 5?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Let's see,
that movie opened in like
July, July.
July 4th, right?
That's surprising.
Yeah.
Number 1 song in the U.S. this week, Shake Your Tail Feather by Nelly, P. Diddy, and Murphy Lee, hell yeah. Number 1 song in Canada, Bridge Over Troubled Water, / This Is the Night by Clay Aiken. This was number 1 for 13 weeks.
Wow.
Bryden, explain.
That was before my time. I think I didn't watch that season of American Idol. I think the only thing I watched with Clay Aiken when it was on was when he was on Celebrity Apprentice with my parents, which is a very weird thing. But that was after he won American Idol.
One time I hooked up with someone in college who then asked if he could watch Celebrity Apprentice because it's what he watches before he goes to sleep every night. And I was like, oh God, I've made a mistake every night.
Every night?
That's a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
I also watched it with my mom sometimes when it was on. Like, I can relate to that experience. But every night to fall asleep?
Yeah,
Goodness.
it didn't last long. I'll just put it that way. Wasn't Bret Michaels on Celebrity Apprentice at one point?
Yes.
He did really well, as I recall.
And Dee Snider was also on.
Dee Snider. I remember,
Strangeland's Dee Snider? Really? Okay.
I also just remember that Bret Michaels, I think in the middle of that season, even though I don't watch this, I remember it being a news story that he had a brain aneurysm, I think, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, it's awful," and Trump was like, "Oh my God, I don't know what we're gonna do about the final," and it's just
Of
Trump.
course.
Wait, what?
Nobody was like, "Whoa, what
First of
about
all, I'm
Celebrity
shocked.
Apprentice?" Oh God.
Shocked at this news, yeah.
First of all, Tom Green was on the Celebrity Apprentice. We can carve out 10 minutes to talk
What
about that.
season? How did I not know this?
I don't know what season, but I remember it was him and Dennis Rodman were together doing stuff. And yeah, huge Tom Green fan, so of course I know that.
It was season 2.
Season 2!
That's wild. I don't remember that at all. I must have blocked it out.
Didn't he, I think he's talked about it on there's an episode of Comedy Bang Bang where he was talking about that, and he got I think he got kicked off because he got really drunk one night before they were
With
supposed
Dennis
to air.
Rodman.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, for showing lousy leadership by sleeping in, not bringing any money, and getting Dennis Rodman drunk behind the scenes, which upset Trump as he was very protective of Dennis's sobriety. That's the
Oh, well, that's not a fun twist. I was
the
gonna
worst,
say
the worst person making a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, oh, if I had the opportunity to drink with Dennis Rodman, I would definitely do that. I didn't know he was sober, and now I feel like an ass.
Listen, I didn't know this either. This was a very long time ago, so yeah.
Good Lord Almighty, where are we? Clay Aiken, check him out. I don't know. Plot description from Google, which is always funny. This plot description makes it seem like James DeBello, aka Bert, is the main character, which he very much isn't. But Bert, played by James DeBello, a college student vacationing with friends in the mountains, mistakenly shoots a local man with a skin infection while hunting in the woods. Panicking, he abandons the scene and leaves the man for dead. When the man stumbles into a reservoir, he infects the water supply, and soon one of Bert's friends become infected. The friends struggle to stop the contagious flesh-eating disease while on the run from a group of ornery backwoods locals out for revenge. Yeah, it makes it seem like only Bert is a character, and he's fourth build, so I don't understand that. Of course, this is nominated for 5 Fangoria Chainsaw Awards, which is our finest institution. Best Wide Release Film, Best Screenplay. It won for Best Score, nominated for Best Makeup and also Worst Film.
Aw.
How could you nominate Best Wide Release Film and Worst Film? Whatever. Story by and co-written by Eli Roth. This is his first feature film screenplay, and Randy Perlstein seems to be his only script, has done some video game voice acting and some acting on Chappelle Show, and was in Dead Man on Campus in 1998, because of course. They were apparently roommates in film school, and Roth had a rough draft that he wanted Randy's help on and getting it to feature length. Directed by Eli Roth. This is his first feature film. Apparently, he created some shorts called Chowda Heads in 1999 that were going to air in between breaks on WCW, but then Eric Bischoff got fired and that fell through. That's a trivia fact just for me. I'm sorry, but while learning about that, after this, Hostel in 2005 and its sequel in 2007, The Green Inferno in 2013, and a documentary about saving sharks called Finn in 2021, which I did not know about until I listened to his postmortem episode. I had no idea that he did a documentary about sharks. Starring Ryder Strong as Paul. Prior to this, Boy Meets World from 2013 to 2000. After this, Tooth and Nail in 2007. Makes a very, 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 very small cameo in the direct-to-video sequel Cabin Fever 2 Spring Fever in 2009. And 27 episodes of Star versus the Forces of Evil from 2015 to 2019. Jordan Ladd as Karen. Prior to this, Nowhere in 1997. Never Been Kissed. I know, I can't wait for the 4K. Never Been Kissed in 1999. One episode of 6 Feet Under as Jeannie in 2001. Do you remember that, Charlie?
No, but that must be the first season, right?
2001.
I think that's the first season.
I think so.
Yeah.
After this, Club Dread in 2004. Polly ages like milk, but I kind of like it. Bill Paxton in that movie is very funny. Inland Empire in 2006. Death Proof and Hostel Part 2 in 2007. Satanic Panic in 2019, which when the DVD went to Walmart, it was just called Panic.
That's a different...
Artisan fans were like saying, "Hey, wait a minute, where's William H. Macy?"
Where's William H. Macy? James DeBello as Bert, prior to this, American Pie and Detroit Rock City in 1999. Christopher Dante, a.k.a. Madison Bell's brother in Swim Fan 2002. Listen to our episode. After this, not much. Serena Vincent as Marcy, prior to this, Not Another Teen Movie in 2001. After this, Murder Set Pieces in 2004. This is my biggest of all time. My biggest, I can't believe I was obsessed with this awful film in high school. Also starring Joey Kern and Gillespie Andrews. Strap in, I have a lot of trivia. And like I promised you guys, a lot of this is just going to make you hate Eli Roth more. Director Eli Roth originally got the idea for this film while working in Iceland on a horse farm. He got some bad skin infection from the rotting hay in the barn that his face broke out in sores, bled, and peeled off when he shaved. Early attempts to sell the script was unsuccessful because studios felt that horror genre was unprofitable, but by the time that Scream came out in 1996, studios again began interested in horror properties. Eli Roth still could not sell his script, as the studios told him it should be more like Scream. Many potential financiers also found the film's content to be unsettling, including not only the gore, but also the use of the N-word early in the film.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Not just early in the film, but in the end. Anyways, the audition scene the producers chose for actresses who wanted to play Marcy was her notorious "it's like being on a plane" scene. Save your comments. In which Marcy compares her dire situation to being on a plane doomed to crash. This was an unfortunate choice on the part of the producers, as the scheduled date for the auditions was September 11th, 2001. The producers made efforts to call off the auditions, but due to the general chaos, they found it impossible to contact all the actresses. Coincidentally, the auditions went ahead as planned, and Serena Vincent came in, and she got the part. While filming a particularly bloody scene, Ryder Strong decided to go for a walk in the woods between setups. Covered head to toe in blood, he happened upon a group of 35 schoolgirls who were on a field trip. The girls screamed at the sight of a blood-drenched hiker, and then screamed even louder when they realized the hiker was the star of Boy Meets World.
Yeah.
The girls chased Ryder through the woods. Ryder eventually made it back to the film crew and vowed never to wander off between scenes again.
I mean, what did he think was gonna happen? Like, I guess
It's the start of this movie. You know what I mean? Like, he almost went and started this movie accidentally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crew member Robert Jones took home the decapitated body prop once the film wrapped and was pulled over while driving home by police officers at gunpoint who thought the corpse in the passenger seat was real. The police held Jones at gunpoint until they were able to confirm the lifelike body was only a prop.
That's good special effects.
I mean, yeah, but that's not that should be on the cover or something like that. So real, you'll get pulled over. Sound mixer John Neff survived the real flesh-eating bacterium when he was contracted in a hospital during minor surgery. It took 13 days of nonstop intensive care medical attention to save his life. Neff maintains the makeup in the film is 100% accurate. Cool. The first thing that's going to brush us up against Eli Roth, strap in, folks. During her sex scene with Ryder Strong, Eli Roth wanted Serena Vincent to be completely naked, but Vincent, who had previously played a student who never wore clothes in not another teen movie, was concerned that overexposing herself would lead to her being typecast as the nude scene chick and refused to bare her rear in Cabin Fever. The standoff between the director and the actress became so intense that Vincent informed Roth that if he truly wanted a naked ass in the scene, he would have to get another actress to play the role. Eventually, the two hammered out a compromise. Vincent would show 1 inch of her ass on film, no more, no less. When the scene was set to be filmed, Roth brought a ruler and literally measured 1 inch of Vincent's ass.
What the fuck?
Keeps going.
Meanwhile, Eli Roth showed his entire ass.
Yeah.
Bed sheets were then taped to Vincent's ass at the designed area before the sex scene was shot. Ironically, Vincent later volunteered to bare her breasts in a scene that didn't call for them. During the bathroom scene where she discovers the rashes on her back, the screen had her wearing a robe, but she said that the scenario was too unrealistic and volunteered to do it topless. Weird. Just...
I mean, if it was her choice, like, I guess that's fine and everything, but it's...
Oh, that's fine. And that goes to... during the commentary, which listening to Eli Roth's commentary was more enjoyable than rewatching the movie. He basically said, he was just like, oh yeah, actresses came in and they had a problem with the nudity, and I'm just like, you're coming to the audition wearing a G-string, I don't know what the problem is. And I was just like, welcome to 2002, folks.
Man. And it's like, he just, you know what? No, I'll save it. We're gonna get into it.
Oh yeah. Bert's shirt says ripe on 6/13/04. Did y'all guys notice that?
Yeah.
Yes,
This is
I
the
did.
day Mary Kate and
The
Ashley
Olsen
Olsen
twins.
turned 18.
Oh, God.
As a culture, we really failed with that. There was a countdown website.
Yes, there was. Oh my
Y'all
god.
remember that?
There was?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit older than you guys, I think, so I might remember
No,
that
I do
better.
remember that. I was only 12 at the time, but I do remember that, and it was like that pretty much through all the 2000s.
Yeah.
Of a lot of
It was a different time.
To quote the John Waters film Female Trouble, the world of heterosexuals is a sick and boring life.
I don't think you're wrong.
And it's also just wild too, because like he has the backwards cap that says "F you," and it's like, this seems obnoxious. And it's like, no, we need one other bit of attire that will show just how gross this guy is.
Okay, but is Bert like the best person in the friend group? Because I think he might actually be.
Huh.
Let's break it down once we get into initial thoughts.
All right, I'm not sure I'm ready to defend that, but it is a thought I had watching it this time, so I'll save it.
Yeah.
Okay. Angelo Badalamenti donated three compositions to the Cabin Fever soundtrack: Red Dream, Deputy Winston's theme, and Love theme, when the production nearly ran out of money during filming.
When I saw his name come up on the credits, I couldn't believe it.
I know.
Apparently, Eli Roth ran into him at Cannes or at TIFF the year before Cabin Fever was there, and he was just like, hey, I like your stuff. And he was like, okay. And it was as simple as that.
Do you think he'd write me a song if I just walk up and say I like his stuff?
He's no longer with. He's no
I
longer
know,
with us.
but like if I, but what if I did?
Yeah.
Yeah. Be like, I just need some music to run to. Can I give you like, $20?
It would be the weirdest shit.
Peter Jackson stopped production of The Return of the King 3 times to screen this movie for the entire crew. Jackson was so enthusiastic about the film, he gave director Eli Roth publicity quotes.
He did.
Imagine you've been filming Lord of the Rings for like 2 fucking years, and this guy makes you watch an Eli Roth movie for 3 times.
I really did think of that, where Miranda Otto was just probably in that room just being like, okay, we're really doing this today? Like, this is what we're spending our time doing? Okay, like, I guess. But I do remember when I saw commercial ads for this, like, and there were a ton, they always used Peter Jackson's quotes for the TV ads. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that too. One more trivia fact. I'm sorry. This movie had the lowest budget of any Lionsgate film released in 2003, $1.5 million, and was their highest grossing film in 2003, $22 million box office. It was also the most profitable horror film released in 2003. Now, Saw, the next year released by Lionsgate as well, would beat this film's record the following year for highest grossing film on a similar lower budget, grossing over $100 million of a budget of $1.2 million. Out of the 347 films shown at the 2002 TIFF, Cabin Fever was screened last and became the highest-selling movie at the festival. Nearly all of the 9 studios who engaged in a bidding war had passed on the movie at script stage, the exception being the eventual winner, Lionsgate, who was not in existence when the script was first written. Lionsgate bought the movie for an undisclosed sum in the high 7 figures with an 8-figure commitment to print and advertisement. It's the most money Lionsgate has ever spent acquiring a motion picture. I don't know when that was typed. I'm sure they've spent more now, but 5 years into Lionsgate being a thing, so that's pretty nuts.
You know when you've known someone a long time and you just want to kiss them just to see if they're a good kisser or not?
There's nothing wrong with that, right?
I feel nauseous.
Well, it's not funny. Can you help me?
No. She's not coming near me.
What's
Your problem.
You guys gonna kill each other now?
You don't look so hot. Help me. I need a doctor.
I don't want to get sick. I don't want any of us getting sick.
We just don't want to get it.
I say we get out of here right now.
He's coming towards us.
All right, back off.
He looked like he was skinned alive.
Party man.
Is it safe?
Don't worry, I'm healthy.
Leave us alone! Somebody help! I'm burning!
Initial thoughts. Ariel, as our guest, please hit us with your initial thoughts.
Yeah. So, I remember seeing this movie when it came out, and I was like, oh, I love this movie. This is one of the sickest things I've ever seen. And Lionsgate makes everything I love, as it turns out. So I react that way to, like, every Lionsgate property. But I just remember, like, some of the images sticking with me for a really long time, like Karen's face when it's falling off, and, like, the dog ripping in half, and just like the all the blood that gets like coughed up. I've watched it a few times since then. I don't like it as much as I did when it first came out, but I still find things to enjoy about it. Particularly Paul and his actions have not aged well. Like when I first saw them, I was just like, unrequited crush. And now I'm like, Paul is a pest and a predator. So, and also doesn't know a vagina from a flesh wound, which is upsetting to me.
Yeah.
So there is that. But I, like many outbreak movies, this hits a little bit different after COVID. It makes me a little bit more anxious after COVID.
Right.
But it's still a movie that I will champion. As much as I think Eli Roth as a person sucks, I actually really like a lot of his movies, and I'm really excited for Thanksgiving that's coming out later this year. And so I kind of want to I want him to shut up sometimes, but also I do give him a lot of my money, so.
Yeah, I've talked with Charlie and Bryden about if Eli Roth was just a horror movie journalist, he would be incredible because he knows so much, he loves so much, he's always propping up and producing other people's stuff and all of that stuff. He's great. And him being on the on Mick Garris's podcast, another person who is, I don't think is a very good director, but is an incredible horror movie journalist. It's just like, if those two guys would just sit and talk about horror movies and not try to make a sequel to Hostel 2, that'd be great.
Oh no, we don't acknowledge Hostel 3 in this house.
Yeah.
Hostel 2 rules. I love Hostel 2. Hostel 3 makes me want to walk into the sea.
I have not seen that. I haven't seen Hostel 2 since it came out, and I was not a fan.
Really? I love it. I like it way better than Hostel, but the third one, just nobody should ever watch for any reason.
Was the third one, did that even go to theaters?
No.
It did not. It was straight to DVD.
Yeah. They went to Vegas.
Yep.
Cool. I don't know. He said he had zero part in that, or in the remake of Cabin Fever, which, goddamn it, I forgot to watch. There's literally a YouTube video that's like 10 minutes of both the original and the remake side to side, and it's apparently like almost a shot-for-shot remake, which is like,
What?
what's the
Yeah.
point after like 15 years? I don't know. Yeah. I'll go ahead and go. I saw this movie not too long after it came out. Way too young to watch it, probably 12 or 13. Of course, loved it because I was just getting into the phase where horror movies didn't scare me anymore, and I was done watching PG-13 horror movies that were terrible. So watching this was awesome. I remember that. I thought pancakes was the funniest line ever because I was 13. But yeah, I had not rewatched it since around mid-2000s. And also, I rewatched Hostel first. That's also... I can't get past the Eli Roth of it all. Like, the gore effects are great. Once it gets going, which for Hostel it takes like 50 minutes, but once it gets going...
long time. Yeah.
Yeah, and for like 45 minutes you're just stuck with like frat dudes, and it's really hard for me to buy that it's like a critique of frat dudes.
It's not.
Because it's not. And I don't see it with Cabin Fever either, because in the commentary he also said, he was like, I wanted this movie, you know, it takes like 45 minutes for somebody to actually get the disease because I wanted you to like love these characters or whatnot. I was like, you wrote them as like the worst people ever, so no, this just makes me hate them. But yeah, I kind of hated this.
Oh no.
Bert's character, he I don't know. They're all pretty much awful besides the women who are just like made to have sex with and get diseases. But him, whenever Jordan Ladd's character is like in bed and she's like going through it and it's right after the reveal that her leg is like almost falling off, and he just gets in the doorway and just keeps screaming at her and calling her a whore, and it like goes on for like ever, and it's so exhausting. Like, and not to mention, of course, all of the just casual homophobia, and also just the racist joke, which is the button of this movie. That's how you end the movie. Mm-hmm.
It is not. It is not. It wasn't worth the payoff then. It's not worth the payoff now. Like, it wasn't funny ever. It's just not good.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything. There is literally no point. So the fact that he fought tooth and nail to get that thing in there, it's like, why?
It's like, this is what you're dying on the hill for.
Yeah. You could take that out and it would be such a... Like, the movie would still suck, in my opinion, not to play my hand too early, but, like, it would absolutely... Like, nothing would have... Like, yeah, there's no point. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and in the commentary track, he says the N-word like at least 6 times, so
that's
where we're
good. Come on.
Yeah, it
makes it really hard to defend his movies when he acts this way. I need to write him a letter.
Go ahead, please, for all of us. You can CC us.
Okay.
I say this, and my childhood room still has a poster of Hostel, so who cares? That poster rips. The one where it's the side view and the chainsaw.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
pretty cool. You know what, Charlie? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in a very similar boat that Kevin's in. I remember seeing ads for this on TV and starting to get into horror movies, and then I think I eventually saw it in high school, like a couple years after it came out. I was like 15 or 16, and I liked it a lot then. And yeah, rewatching it now, it just left a really sour taste in my mouth all around. And the only like thing where I just kept, there's all these homages to other better horror movies, and it just made me want to watch those. Here's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, here's Night of the Living Dead, here's all this stuff. But I got to the point of like, what is this thing like actually about? Not that movies need to be about anything too serious, but like, what is he trying to get at here? And the thing that I could only come up with them is I was like, oh, it's kind of the opposite of Carrie in that the male version of the group fingers his teenage crush, gets covered in blood, then becomes a mass murderer as it becomes an unintentional self-critique of toxic masculinity, when in fact that is completely disproved by everything Eli Roth has said about this movie. Like, it's
Are we counting that as fingering?
I mean, I guess we can't see what's going on underneath the covers, but like...
Yeah, probably. That scene... It is almost like a great scene. It's very like cheesy, but what it could have been great, like just going under the covers and coming out hand of blood and then ripping off the covers and seeing the leg.
If he was gonna like cuddle her Or like he was tucking her in and then there's blood. Like,
Right. Yeah. But and then it shows its hand like 20 seconds before the reveal where like the strings start coming in, and
And
it's
you
just
hear
like
the
if it would
squishiness,
just
yeah.
yeah.
oh, and
it's-
also the fact that like they kissed one time before. Now she's passed out, so you're gonna jump straight
Yeah,
to
it's
third
yeah,
base.
it's very rapey. It's really creepy.
Yeah, and not to mention like the first time we see them, she's like asleep on his shoulder. Like they even frame it in a way that's like, oh, it's clear the signs are here, but then he just fucking goes ahead and is a total asshole creep. Like, yeah.
Oh, it's clear
predator.
she feels comfortable with him.
Yeah.
And safe
yeah.
with him. They've been friends since they were children. So he sexually assaults her, and he doesn't know a vagina from a flesh wound. So Paul can just kick rocks.
Yeah, and none of them ever. It's never acknowledged by the characters or the film that is what happened,
Nope.
which is really icky.
no.
Because in 2002, we weren't saying that.
Yeah, I mean that ultimately is what I felt. Like I remembered liking it for the gore, and what
Oh, yeah.
really upset me watching it this time around was I was like, I watched this like 2 years after it came out, and like, closeted me was like, yeah, this was just totally normal. Like I wasn't fazed by any of these, these outdated, like. I mean, they were outdated. They were offensive back then. They're even more offensive now. But, like, I was just like, it's a bad sign in a horror movie where I'm not shocked by everything that's trying to scare me, and I'm shocked by everything around it and just uncomfortable and, like, upset by everything. Which is, I'm not trying to be, like, it'd be like, shame on you for the whole thing, but I'm just like, it's tonally all over the place. It doesn't really have a thorough commentary. Like, these people are insufferable. Why would I care? And I honestly thought, I thought watching this in COVID, I'm like, well, this is going to be really interesting considering we just lived through a pandemic and stuff like that. And in fact, the fact that it says absolutely nothing actually makes it worse in retrospect for me, that like, having us not with a flesh-eating virus, but very much a virus that killed, countless people.
A few people. Yeah.
Yeah, just a few.
Yeah.
The whole thing, and again, I'm also with Kevin in that Eli Roth has this smug douchebag vibe to not just his characters, but it's clear that he's just a jerk. He's just the jockey, like very self. He finds himself to be very quote unquote cool and self-important, and self-congratulatory to the point that like. It's just gross to me. It's just everything that I just am repelled by in like filmmaking these days. So yeah, I also kind of hated this, and it bummed me out because again, I had fond memories of it as a teenager watching it with friends and being like, oh, like having fun, just getting grossed out by it. But now, like, apart from the makeup, which is still impressive, it's just like it's an ugly film. It's just I found it incredibly unpleasant and kind of morally reprehensible in many ways. So yeah.
Yeah. Really the only thing that, Charlie, you were mentioning before I watched it, how it plays after COVID or during COVID, however you want to say it. And the only thing that is just like, oh, Joey Kern's character, like, is like halfway through the movie is like covering his face with a cloth and like just runs off, just like quarantines himself in the woods and then comes back. And then I don't know if you guys caught this, but it's actually a homage to Night of the Living Dead. Okay. Anyways, Bryden. Initial thoughts.
Yeah, so I had not seen this before. I obviously knew of its reputation. It was in like the Bravo's Scariest Movie Moments countdown, which Ryder Strong was like a big talking head for that, and talking about how like Eli Roth was like very gleeful, like to like tear down sort of the Boy Meets World image that he had by like covering him in blood and stuff. I think I knew like the general like twist of like like the racist joke at the end, and like it was like one of those movies where like I was like, I'm not going to see this, but I'll read like the plot synopsis, and then it was never really on my watch list because it just didn't really seem like my kind of bag. I feel like even some hardcore horror fans I know of like are not exactly privy to Roth's steel. It was funny, I had not seen like Hostel before this, and I did not get to watch his research, but like I'd seen his horror forays. Like I saw the Death Wish remake that he did, and I saw House with the Clock Dance Walls, which like is one attempt at a kids movie, and wasn't super impressed with those. So I was just kind of like, okay, maybe just isn't my whole deal. And when we're talking about like all the outdated stuff, I mean, it's weird. It's weird to talk about Roth because like some of this stuff, it's just like I've heard talk about his creepiness, like as a person in real life. And it's like stuff that were like a lot of deleted tweets. So like it's kind of hard to like not that I'm saying that like that. I believe that if people are saying it, I believe it. But it's hard to find actual like receipts, I guess, because I guess people didn't take screenshots or accounts were deleted and all this weird stuff. But I don't know. So the stuff that's like knowing the stuff in the movie and knowing that with like the Jordan lad Ryder Strong scene in bed and knowing about his creepiness and there not being much of a commentary there, that like makes it all the more unsettling in ways that are not something that you want to confront. Anyways, the movie, I think it starts, but honestly, the thing that I liked most about the movie was the title sequence. I think like that's actually really cool. I was talking to Kevin and Charlie about how like it reminded me, especially like it's sort of like a wax paper sort of texture, like gradually like browning up and like then turning
and
red.
the flies, the sound of the flies.
The rising volume of that, like it's like just the implication of like something horrible, like
something
the surface.
Sick.
Yes, it's really cool.
Yes.
And I was saying when it like was like browning up, I said to Kevin and Charlie, it looked almost like the cover for like Downward Spiral by Nine Inch Nails.
Hell yeah, it does.
I like this. Yeah. But then very quickly, I kind of like just was not really into this movie's whole deal. Like you've all said, there isn't really what makes like the noxious dialogue really great is that it doesn't really seem like it's based in any kind of character or commentary. It's just like they're bad for no reason. Like it's like, why are you shooting squirrels? And then like he just comes up with a reason. It's like, because they're gay. And it's like,
and then her response is to say, don't be an R word. Oh,
yeah.
2002.
Oh, yeah, that was a
2003.
1-2 punch.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what's the point? Like, what? I don't know what you're saying with this other than like, oh, no, they suck or whatever. But like, if you say he likes the characters, then it's like, well, you missed the mark completely. But
I mean, it's sorry to interrupt real quick, but it really did, like, that's what kind of upset me was I was like, this is how, like, teenagers and college jocks, like, just talked back then, which is just, that's fucked up. Like, because it didn't phase any of us. It didn't phase any of us back in the day, or me at least. It didn't phase me where I was just like, yeah, that's just normal horror dialogue.
Yeah,
sorry, Bryden.
No, it's fine. And if there was, like, I don't know, any deeper commentary about, like, well, why they talk like this, or, like, why they behave like this, I mean, maybe you'd have something, but, like, it doesn't seem like Roth really has much on his mind with that, with why they talk like that. Also, it's just, like, I mean, it's sometimes weird, too, like, when I just, like, see movies with, like, very hostile friend groups, I'm just like, why would anyone in this group hang out with each other?
What type of friend groups?
Hostile? Oh my god, I didn't, that was completely unintentional, I promise. But, it's just, like, they all seem to hate each other, and I'm just like, why are they friends in the first place?
Yeah, at least in Hostel, like, you can understand why those three assholes are all friends. Here it's like, why would you ever want to hang out with fucking Swim Fan Brother? Like, he's just, like, everyone just seems annoyed by his presence, and it's because he does suck, so...
And I think there are a handful of decent images in here, like, whenever, like, the screen, like, goes sort of, like, tinted red when, like, you're looking at the shed, and... You know, I like the sort of, like, autumnal setting and everything. I think that especially helps, like, sort of, like, the sense of, like, something rotting in the woods when they're out there. Like, there's, like, there's, like, a handful of good ideas in this movie, but I also think Roth doesn't really know how to pace the movie especially well. Like, it's weird that, like, Ryder Strong finds out that it's the water that's poisoned, like, 80 minutes into the movie or something like that. It's very weird how that, like, it doesn't seem... And, yeah, and... Also, with the COVID, parallels that you brought up, Charlie, it's interesting how, like, there is a potential for some sort of commentary where it's they are getting sick, but they just want to, like, party and everything, and sort of, like, giving into their hedonism. Like, that would be kind of an interesting thing. But then, like, there's no fun in the movie and everything. Like, they never seem like they're having fun at any point in the movie. And, like, I feel like that's a missed opportunity. I mean, the movie I thought of just now when you're talking about COVID parallels, it's not even a parallel, but Sick, the John Hines movie is out right now. Now, I know people have issues with that movie. That is fine. I understand people have issues with that movie, but there is something, I mean, it's definitely, I know because we've lived through it, where it's like people are like, well, who cares if we're getting sick? We want to get fucked up and everything. And it's like that, there is like a sliver or something, there's something there, and something really cutting in that movie's commentary, and Cabin Fever doesn't really get to that level, because they're all just miserable from the jump. I'm sorry, I feel like I cut you off, Charlie. You were going to say something.
Oh, no, just I agree with you. I know people have issues with Sick. I think it gets a little thorny and murky ways towards the last third of that movie, but at least that setup makes sense, and it is biting towards, that is how teenagers would act.
I still haven't seen it, so I need to see it.
It's very enjoyable.
It's so much fun. It really is.
I'm excited for it.
Especially if you like Scream and stuff
Which
like
I
that.
do.
It's very much in that wheelhouse.
It's also so well directed. I mean, the way they craft certain sequences is just phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like Roth, like, even when he stumbles upon, like, a good visual idea, I feel like he kind of messes it up with, like, the edit and everything. Like, he cuts a lot and everything, and it just kind of messes... It's kind of like a janky rhythm for me, like, throughout the whole way. And then, especially the ending, too, where, like, it's so abrupt, like, the way they just have, like, the joke, and then it, like, cuts to credits. I'm like... It's like, it doesn't land with, like, a proper sting. And again, it's like, this speaks to the tonal whiplash, where it's like, well, I don't really feel, like, chilled at the end. It just feel like kind of like confused about how I'm supposed to feel, and not like in a way that's like actually uncomfortable. It's just like, well, what the fuck did I sit through this movie for? Anyways, sorry.
It's a sloppy movie, and he's a sadist, and he's honest about being a sadist, but that's really like, just the entire time. I agree with you about the running time, Bryden, because this movie's like 90 something minutes, and I remember turning it on being like, well, at least it'll go by, and then being like, I had to keep pausing and being like, shit, really? Like, there's this much movie left? Like, I remember what happened. Like, the character, also, 2/3 of Detroit Rock City are in this movie, not a movie that I love.
Of course they are.
Yeah. But what's his name who plays the sheriff? Anytime he comes on screen, it just stops the movie dead in its tracks, where it's just
Party
like...
Man! It's the Party Man!
Yeah. Like,
I kind of like him. Not him as the character, I just like that actor.
I don't even think it's his fault. Yeah, it's just, but again, it's just like, wait, what tone is this going for? Like, I don't understand.
It's like kind of jazzy music.
Yeah.
It's very much aping Last House on the Left.
Yeah, and then there's like a bad Stand By Me-esque scene where they tell a campfire story that has nothing to do with anything.
Oh yeah, we'll get into that story.
I really like that scene.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to start injecting some positivity here, you guys.
Go,
I
please,
like a lot of things
please.
about this movie.
Yeah.
Sure.
No,
That's totally fair.
I love that scene. It doesn't make a damn bit of sense. Why is it there? But it's like one of the best scenes in the movie. It's one of the scariest, tensest pieces of the movie. And it feels to me, I don't know if this is true, but it feels to me like Eli Roth had this short film in mind that he didn't have a chance to do, so he crammed it into his first feature film. And I feel like sometimes a lot of directors' first feature film feels that way, where they're like, I don't know if I'm ever going to get to do that again, so here's a bunch of ideas I have, like you guys talked about on your House of a Thousand Corpses episode, which I absolutely love. I think that's a 5-star movie. But I do feel like Rob Zombie did a bunch of stuff because he didn't know if he was going to get to do it again.
1000%, yes.
And I wonder if that was Eli Roth here, but I actually think that scene is like really well crafted. Even okay, I think I want to kick Eli Roth in the shin. I also think that he's a good director in that he gets exactly the performances he wants out of his actors, whether or not we end up vibing with those. I think he gets exactly what he wants. I think his problem always is tone and pacing. Which is big. That's not like a small problem. So I think like while the bowling alley scene I think is really good, it tonally doesn't make a damn bit of sense, and then he gives himself a cameo and you're like, what is going on here? Why are we doing this? But the bowling alley scene in and of itself I think is like a happy little nice little nugget in the movie.
Yeah, and you're right that it's interesting too how it's shot, like how it's like a lot of like shadowy backgrounds and everything, so it is like kind of like hiding like the most like grisly parts of it and everything, which is like a nice bit of like sort of veiling the horror and everything, and that's like sometimes the most effective horror, like what you can't always see clearly. Yeah, no, like it is an interestingly shot scene, especially because it like stands out like with the rest of the movie in terms of how it looks. But yeah, right, it is just sort of like I get to the end of the movie and I'm like, so, like, how did that factor into the rest of the movie?
It doesn't.
But, yeah.
Neither does Dennis with the pancakes. Like, he needed an editor, you know, like a stronger hand at editing.
I was talking to Kevin and Bryden about this. There is one joke that I thought was very funny because they don't shout it out, but it's when Dennis is, like, sitting on the bench in the beginning. Yeah, the sign, where they're like, you should put up a sign or something, and then later in the movie they don't even call attention to the fact that there's a new sign up, but it just says, do not sit next to Dennis.
It's underlined not,
That is perfect.
And,
yeah.
Yeah, like that is like if the whole movie was like that, it would be fine. Like, I also think it's interesting. You're talking about the performances. I actually think that the two best performances are Jordan Ladd and Serena Vincent. And the one thing that I do remember being really chilling about the ads, and both times I've seen it now, is I think Jordan Ladd is very, very good in that scene where she is just begging for help, and they're like, she's not coming out here, and that "don't leave me" scream is actually pretty chilling. Like, that I find to be extremely...
I have remembered that for like 20 years, and I've never rewatched them. As that scream.
Mm-hmm.
It was all in every ad. It was in the trailer. I mean, it's like, it's really devastating. Just even if she's not a character, it's still clearly a human being in pain, and that's like what the one sympathetic character. And then Serena Vincent, we'll get into the plot, but I actually think she actually seems like sort of a real person at times. There's one moment that I liked where they're fighting and she just goes, "Good morning, boys, you're gonna kill each other now," and just kind of keeps walking. Like, oddly enough, I think Eli Roth has huge issues with women when it comes to his films, but yet the two characters that I enjoyed the most were them, maybe because they're not douchebag bros who like are out of like Animal House or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I was just thinking about Marcy's character. Like, when I think about all these friends in this group, I'm like, oh god, they suck, they're not likable. But then when I sort of like break them down into their individual ways of being in the movie, I'm kind of like, well, there's some good things here and there. Maybe they make each other worse, because after like they put Karen in the shed, and they know there's a sickness, but they don't know what it is. And that part really resonated with me after going through COVID and that, because I remember in the beginning when we were like, are we supposed to wipe down groceries? What are we doing?
Yeah.
And they're kind of there. They're like, should we cook for each other? I wash these dishes. Are they okay to use? And Marcy cooks for everybody. And like, that really stands out to me as like a touching moment in the film, where she's just like, I made everybody chili, is nobody gonna eat? She's like trying to hold together some sense of togetherness in the group. And it makes sense that nobody really wants to eat at that moment. They're all a little freaked out, grossed out. They don't know what's safe to do or not. But she's kind of like, I tried something, guys. Sorry. And then like, she's the one, she and Paul are trying to get Karen into the truck when they're like trying to run away and leave. And I think Bert is like, I don't want to sit by her, but they're like, we need to get her in the truck. So like, I actually think that, they might be idiots, but they're probably not that bad. Like, they're probably regular people. Like, Paul sucks. He can go. But like, Jeff's a little bit arrogant and like rude, but he's also scared. And he's also used to having his way, so, like, I kind of get it. Bert should use different language, but probably no one's told him that yet. Otherwise, he's, like, a really emotional, empathetic dude, and he's, like, just happy to be here, happy to be hanging out. Like, I really think there are some good things about these characters, but sort of, like, the sum of their parts is really annoying.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Nobody also questions Paul. Like,
not once.
It's like nobody ever questions, hey, do you think you might be sick because you were covered in her blood? Like, no one even cares. And COVID works in weird ways too. I had friends who literally shared a joint, and then one was positive the next day, and then the other friend was like, well, I am quarantining because I absolutely have it, and nothing happened. So like, diseases, weird. There's no sense to them and who gets infected and what, but like, nobody even questions Paul in terms of like, he comes out covered in her blood, and it's clear that they know that something sexual has been going on, or assault has been going on, although they don't see it as that, and just nothing. Like, it's not even brought up into conversation. Like, which is really frustrating.
Well, I think back to like before COVID, and this is sort of like, maybe this is a problem with me, but like, since COVID, I'm way more thoughtful about germs than I ever was before. And like, when Cabin Fever came out, I didn't think about that either, about like the blood on him. Like, that's almost like zombie rules, and this isn't a zombie movie, so I wasn't like thinking of it that way. So, and like, along with the characters, you don't really know what makes it happen either. So like, I think now after we've been through COVID, I would think about that, but I didn't before.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. One of my first thoughts whenever we were just getting into lockdown, I was like, this pandemic is just gonna raise a generation of germaphobes. Like, in which
for sure.
1000%. Like I'm a lot more lax. I've been vaxxed, etc. But almost every time I'm in my car, there's hand sanitizer, and I still use it as if it's 2020. Like that's never changing. I've stopped washing my groceries, but that's another thing.
Yes, that's a good thing. We can all let that go. I hope.
Yeah.
The one thing I will never, sorry, this is a side tangent, it doesn't even have to do with the movie. I'm still amazed as someone who works in a movie theater how many people still stuff tissues into cup holders, like used tissues. And it's disgusting to me. And there's hand sanitizer all around the theater now, but like I feel like that's a part of my everyday thing where I'm just like using a broom to like get it out of a cup holder and then immediately like like I can't believe that's where we were still at. It's insane.
The thing that aggravates me is I feel like I've definitely seen movies. I mean, it bothered me, I think, even before COVID, but like it bothers me now when I see like movies and TV shows where characters like go to the bathroom and then they just leave without washing their hands. I'm just
Or
like,
they
what
just
are you
rinse them.
doing? Yeah.
Or this one gets me every time.
Yeah.
Especially with female characters, it'll be like they go to the bathroom, then they go to the mirror and they like fix their hair and they do this and this and then they wash their hands. I'm like, ew, ew, ew.
Yeah.
yeah.
It's very upsetting.
Do we want to go through the plot real quick, or do you think we've kind of gone through it, or?
Sure, we can. I mean, there's like I guess like some of the key set pieces and stuff. Like, I mean, the thing that the Google synopsis didn't mention was that they set the guy on fire when like they tried to shoo him away, which is
kind of cool.
I made a note of that. Moral of this film: do not set people on fire. Like,
that's a good.
And I will say, I don't know. I don't know if this is aiming for dark comedy, but it did make me laugh. I wrote the quote down. Jordan Ladd says, "Paul, that man asked for our help, and we set him on fire." Like,
it's good, yeah.
Yeah, where she's like, "I'm sorry, I'm not in the mood to be very social." Like,
a set piece we haven't mentioned that I really, really like is when Paul falls in the nasty, disgusting water.
That made me laugh. Yeah. But
it makes me like cringe and like, it's so gross. Like my favorite thing about this movie is how gross it is. Like that is what I'm here for, and I love all the squelching and the flesh and the nastiness and the fluids. Like, yes, give me more of that.
Probably the most iconic part from the movie is the leg shaving scene.
Yes.
Which I have some thoughts. They just had sex, and her first thought is to shave exactly one of her legs, but that's neither here nor there.
Crying,
it looks cool.
It's not. Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and say every person I've spoken to who shaves their legs would not have chosen to do that in that moment. It's a weird choice.
Yeah. But I mean, it's cool. It looks cool. What do you? Yeah. So.
And Eli Roth, whenever people point out a weird thing to him in his movies, it seems like he goes, well, that really happened to me. And like, maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but it's like weirdly defensive. So when people asked him about the leg shaving scene, they were like, well, that happened to me when I got the bacteria working on the horse farm. I shaved my face and part of my face came off. And I'm like, okay, settle down. We don't all have to put all the things that happen to us in every movie.
Oh, someone's a little insecure.
I mean, I think I saw something where somebody was just like, this remake of Death Wish kind of a little bit racist, and he was just like, here's my fucking 5-page MLA format essay to retort that. That type of thing. And the thing about him is when I hear him talk about his movies, I'm just like, that sounds really interesting. And then I watch the movie and I'm like, you didn't put any of that into the movie. Because hearing him talk about Hostel, where he's talking about, like, you know, this is like a very middle of the
American
bush
exceptionalism.
Yes, and it's just like you can buy anything, and this is in the middle of the Bush administration and all that. I was like, where's that in the movie?
Nowhere.
I'm not saying you have to hammer it, and I heard him say something where he was like, Tarantino always taught me that the subtext doesn't ever have to be the text or whatnot. I was like, sir, there's no subtext either.
No.
There's none. Which, it can be cheap gore and thrills and stuff like that. It's just like, but it's all just sloppy. You know, I've used that word a couple times now, so I'm sorry I'm repeating myself, but I also just want to say, in terms of set pieces and how this movie kicks off everything in terms of the inciting incident, before I rewatched this, I was talking to my roommate about it, and my roommate was just like, I just don't understand why they don't go to a hospital. And it just made me laugh so hard. But then I rewatched the movie, I'm like, why don't they?
Yeah.
Their car doesn't work most of the time.
Well, yeah,
But
there's bad. Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, I started laughing where I'm like, oh, they trash their own car. like Paul grabs a baseball bat and trashes his own car. I'm like, that doesn't seem to be very like that's how it's convenient. Like, oh shit, well, that sick guy got in our car and I was smashing it, so we can't go anywhere. I'm just like, oh, how convenient for you, movie.
This movie, it sits in a weird place, right? Because there's no supernatural threat, so it's not like an Evil Dead cabin in the woods. There's no slasher element. There's no masked killer coming after them. So we don't really know what we're supposed to expect from this. We don't really know what the tropes are, what we think the characters should do. And the characters kind of act like characters in a slasher movie, where they act really entitled to the world, they show up, they just act like things are theirs, everybody's there to serve them, but then they make choices that we question. And because it isn't a slasher movie, we don't, like, it's like square peg, round hole with those decisions. And at least as an audience member, I'm kind of like, where do I put what you're doing?
Yeah, but it's very much like if somebody was like, oh, this is kind of like a spin-off of like Camp Crystal Lake or something like that. It has those elements of, teens that feel like they can do anything until everything happens to them type of thing. So yeah, that's a great point.
Well, it's just also interesting. I mean, I guess we could talk also about how this movie portrays the quote-unquote backwoods town and everything.
Yes,
it's like,
we should talk about that.
I don't really know what the movie wants us to take away from it. I mean, it would be interesting if the movie was like, where it's like these kids are very fearful of like this sort of foreign part of like their country and everything, and then like it turns out like the town is actually like not so bad. But then like it's like the weird thing where like the town is like guilty of stuff too, where it's like Dennis like biting Bert's and everything like is like what sends like the town into a fever, where it's like, well, my kid bit you, so now we have to kill you. It's like, what? That doesn't make sense, and that doesn't really make much sense. And then like there's also like trading in one stereotype for another. It's like, the racist shopkeeper, turns out it's like, well, he's still racist, but it's like his like white guy thinks he can like, say the N-word and everything, and it's like then they're all playing like, country music, as like the movie fades out or whatever. It's just sort of like,
Bryden, it's hilarious. Why didn't you laugh?
Right.
It's hilarious.
Of course,
okay?
I just didn't get it. Oh my gosh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
But yeah, no,
Charlie?
I just don't know what I don't know what
I was
coherent.
just gonna say,
sorry.
it wants to have its cake and eat it too. It wants to like have it both ways, but not in a way that's clever or smart or even very insightful at all. It's just window dressing. It's all window dressing, and it's. I can assume based on the ending what happens to Paul, it's supposed to be like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre homage, but the Texas Chainsaw Massacre villains are like. They make sense even in that grungy, very even though you could argue those characters are stereotypes, like it does have a thematic coherence to it and what it's saying about this culture. Here it's whatever we can do to make the most crazy wild decision that doesn't add up to anything. The other thing that I got mad about this time around is that Marcy, or the Serena Vincent character, like has that whole epiphany of, it's like, she once her boyfriend abandons her with the beer and abandons them. She has that whole, we're all gonna get it, it's like being on a plane that it's gonna crash, we're going down, and all you want to do is grab the person nearest to you and fuck the shit out of them. And I'm like, no, that really just feels like a revenge fuck for getting dumped, and not in a way that I find to be psychologically believable even in this universe. And it feels like kind of like it just feels ugly to me in a way. And it's also, is it supposed to represent anything about Paul losing his virginity to another woman that he didn't seem to be attracted to at all, and now that she's rotting in the shed, he's just totally on board. There's no interiority to any of these characters, and then it didn't feel like, it just felt contrived to me, and also pretty reductive and regressive in regards to what it's saying about sex and gender. And like, there's even the line about, do you have any condoms? Don't worry about me. And it's like, you could also bring up is it an AIDS allegory? Like, is it about, sexually transmitted diseases. It doesn't care. It's whatever the movie feels like it can use to its advantage to create a gross set piece it can use, which if it was a better movie, fine, but it's not. It's just,
Yeah, which is funny. I was telling y'all in the group chat where I was like, I heard that he made this as an AIDS allegory because I heard through his post-mortem interview that like his mother, Eli Roth's mother, was a painter, and she grew up in New York 90s and had all these queer characters living in their house and whatnot, and then they all started, quit coming around because they got AIDS and died. That was true, but I guess I just misheard him and thought, because right after that he talked about cabin fever, so I was telling y'all that I'm pretty sure he wrote this as an AIDS allegory, and y'all were just like, wait, what? But it wouldn't put past him to think that like all of the sex in this movie ends up in death, which is a horror trope that doesn't have anything to do with like AIDS or anything like that. But yeah, it was just funny hearing that.
It's very telling to me that it's also the scene he used to audition for the role of Marcy.
Yeah.
I really just think he wanted to hear women say these words and get his sex scene in the movie.
Really? Everything we've heard
exactly.
about Eli Roth, I think
I know
that's
it's
a bad
shocking,
face.
it's a hot take.
Yeah. Yeah. I can definitely see that.
I would have loved it. I was also saying to you, Kevin and Charlie, that like I would have loved it if like Paul was just like, that's like your fetish? That's a very odd fetish. Just sort of like having sex while playing is crashing. I mean, it made me think of like also like David Cronenberg's Crash and everything. It's like, this is my very specific thing.
Well, that's why Paul doesn't know the difference between a vagina and a flesh wound, because he just recently watched Crash, so that's why. No.
Actually, now we can uncancel Paul for that.
There we go.
'cause he
Finally.
likes Cronenberg, so.
Because he likes Cronenberg.
Yeah.
What do we also think about the leg shaving scene? I think is very effective.
Yeah,
it still
yeah.
works for me. It's gross, but then Marcy gets like mauled by a dog, and it's actually off screen, which made me think, like, it's really horrific when you see that there's aftermath of her limbs are just everywhere. There's like a foot that's still in her flip flop. But I was kind of like, where did this dog come from? And like, obviously it's infected, and like, it just felt like, well, how does Marcy die? A dog comes out of nowhere and just mauls her, and it just felt like
They didn't know what to do with
like,
her.
I don't know.
Yeah.
They didn't know what to do with her when Joey Kerr goes away. So she has the sex scene because we get the leg shaving scene. She dies by the dog because it needs to eventually just be Ryder Strong and Joey Kern at the end of it.
It's just, again, it speaks to the herky-jerky pacing of the movie and everything. Even, like, just from scene to scene, like, I mean, the thing that sticks out to me, just, like, in terms of how, like, he edits the movie is, like, I think there's, like, a bit where, like, it's them in the woods, and then, like, it cuts to, like, Bert driving with, like, a bloody neck and everything for, like, 10 seconds, and then it cuts back to, like, the woods and everything, and it's just, like, the way the stuff is, like, how long each scene plays out, it's just kind of, like, a weird thing where, like, again, I don't think Roth is very good at, like, in terms of like how to cut together the scenes and everything, or like letting the movie play out, just like, in terms of like momentum. It's very odd.
Oh yeah. Because it's very, and also Ariel, what you were talking about, the first filmmaker putting everything in there. This one also has, just like House of a Thousand Corpses, where it's just like, these are all the movies that inspired me, yada yada yada, and he drops that in Hostel. I feel. It's not as homage and shit like that, but yeah, it the worst thing a movie can do could be like, I could be watching a better movie. So
yeah,
but it does have.
Hostel has the Takashi. Oh, sorry.
Oh, it has the Takashi Miike cameo. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, it does have that, but that's not nearly as bad as all the other stuff that happens in here. That is like, it's flat out stealing, which great artists steal. De Palma is one of my favorite filmmakers. Steals from Hitchcock constantly.
Yeah,
but he's also making commentaries on voyeurism and, amping up the sex and violence for, I would argue, sometimes political reasons. So there's just nothing here.
I mean, he just does it to do it, is the thing.
And the Texas Chainsaw thing that you pointed out, like the homage where it's like looking up at like the house from like, while looking at like the girl from like a low angle and everything. I mean, the shot in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like, that actually has like a sense of scale to it, where the house is like
it's
looming
fucking
large
awesome.
and everything. Whereas
It's
here,
amazing.
it's like the house is like deep in the background here, and like it's doesn't really look that big. It's like from far away, so like it's like he fucks up the scale and everything, because like he has like the girl's rear end and like the foreground. It's just
and it goes like
what's your
slow
attention?
mo.
You have activated a rant that you didn't know you were about to, like, this, I'm like a sleeper agent, and you said my activation phrase talking about this phrase.
I'm sorry, we actually have to stop recording. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead. Please,
I'll
I
just
want to hear
scream
this.
it into the void.
No, please, I want to hear this.
No, I actually just wrote about this. I was writing about the Texas Chainsaw remake from 2003, which I actually do really like.
I really like it too.
Spoiler alert, I really like this era of movies. I think that's why I'm here. But I do really like the Texas Chainsaw remake, but
I do, yeah.
Marcus Nisable completely misunderstands that shot of Pam from behind with the house in the background.
Right,
That shot not only gives us a sense of scale, a sense of loneliness, but it also introduces us to, it like plants the idea of Pam's bare back in our mind for when she gets hung on the hook later, and we think we see that, but we don't really see that.
Yes.
And in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 03, he makes it about Jessica Biel's ass, which is a sexy ass. Like, that's fine. But that's not what the shot's about. You're misunderstanding the sense of scale and, like, loneliness and hopelessness it's supposed to give us and turning her into meat. She's our final girl. You can't turn her into meat. So, yeah, like, I can't, like, any chance I have to, like, jam myself into a conversation to talk about this, I do. So, like, thank you for bringing it up.
Please. And I feel like in the remake, it's also a much tighter shot of her.
Yes.
Yes.
Her butt is center, and
Oh,
there's
good.
less of
Nice.
the house. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wrote
Which is-
pages on this.
I would love to read that. What was I going to say? And it's funny that in the remake, which I do really like, actually, is the house is even bigger.
Yeah.
And it still feels, you don't get that scale from that shot.
Yeah.
And of course, in the original, it has the amazing where the camera's going underneath the swing and then it's
And the
incredible.
generator in the background makes your heart kind of race.
Yes.
Yeah.
Guys, you just want to watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre on stream? Let's
Yeah.
just do that.
Yeah, I just bought I literally just bought the 4K like
I
2
did
weeks ago
too.
and haven't watched it.
I did too.
I have so many copies
Yay.
of this movie now. I need to stop.
I have bought it
I
so
know,
many
me
times. I'll
too.
continue to do it.
It's good.
Yeah.
You know what? Final thoughts on Cabin Fever. What do we got?
I'll add one more thing. So something about the 2000s era of movies. Cabin Fever comes very early. It comes before we sort of establish the torture porn tropes and aesthetic. And so it doesn't really have a lot of that, even though it does get, classified as torture porn. And torture porn movies get very green and yellow later in the decade. Cabin Fever stands out to me because it's very red. And so I just think, like, when I'm rewatching, all my torture porn movies from the 2000s, Cabin Fever looks really different to me. And I don't really have a point there, but I just wanted to say it.
Sorry, I was just going to say, even the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake is, like, really yellow and green, and the movie we're about to talk about, soon is also very yellow and green. So
Yes.
it's a very good point. Which, didn't the Texas Chainsaw remake come out, like, a week or a couple weeks after
I
this?
don't know the timing, but Wrong Turn also came out
Wrong
right
Turn.
around this time too. So there was
yeah.
these like woodsy folk horror otherings, you're not from around here type movies that all came out right in a row.
Just to clarify, because you were curious, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake comes out in October 2003, so it's a month after this movie, which is really interesting.
Yeah. Any more final thoughts, or do we want to load up the tape recorder, turn on the TV, get into a bear trap or two?
Yeah, sounds great.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Almost Major. Please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Please follow the pod on Twitter at Almost Major to keep up to date with what movies we will be covering in the future. Myself, I can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at Kev Bonesy. Bryden can be found on Twitter at Bryden Doyle and on Letterboxd at J Doyle. Charlie can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at CT Nash91. Once again, thank you for listening.